Hello everybody, welcome to Conversations with Construction Connoisseurs. This podcast is brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Building, CIOB, the world's largest and most influential professional body for construction management and leadership, with around 50,000 members in more than 100 countries. Our members, past and present, have had a hand in executing many groundbreaking construction projects from across the world, from the Houses of Parliament in London to the Sydney Opera House, through to venues for the Beijing and London Olympics. The Charter membership provides you with recognition of your abilities, knowledge and experience within the industry, creating more exciting career opportunities. Don't forget to become a free student CIOB member today. I'm your host, I'm Conrad Pereira, I'm the chair of Novus Victoria, and today I have along with me co-host Daisy Wu.
Thank you, Conrad. My name is Daisy Wu. I'm the podcast lead of CIOB Novus Victoria, and I'm an aspiring construction professional and student. It's my pleasure to be here. So here I'd like to welcome all our listeners to Conversation with Construction Connoisseurs, that show that aim to advance construction management education and give access to that knowledge to young students and professionals so that it can be shared and added to. Listen to our thoughts on leading issues within the industry.
Excellent, thank you for that. Today we have with us two guests, Nkanyiso Mbatha and Avu Maake. Nkanyiso is a project manager with Abland Property Developers from Cape Town, South Africa. And Avu is a civil engineer currently working as an assistant project manager for Mace Group, a global consultancy and construction firm operating across 5 continents, such as the UK, Europe, America, Middle East, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Asian Pacific. So welcome both of you to our Conversations with Construction Connoisseurs. Could I please ask you to introduce yourselves to our audience?
All right, thank you, Conrad. I'll start. My name is Nkanyiso Mbatha. As Conrad mentioned, I'm a project manager for Abland Property Developers in Cape Town, South Africa. We specialize in commercial and industrial and residential developments within the Western Cape area. In terms of my background, I'm a construction manager by profession. So I studied BSc Construction Management and I finished my honours degree in 2013 at the University of Nelson Mandela in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. Since then, I've had the privilege of gaining a lot of experience. I've worked cross-border in Africa and other countries, and most recently also worked for Mace here in Cape Town at the V&A waterfront, where we finished one of the very few 6-rated Green Star buildings in South Africa. On a more personal level, I enjoy cycling and hiking, and enjoy watching and playing football. I'll hand over to Avu.
Thanks, Nkanyiso. So my name is Avu Maake, and my background is in civil engineering, where I did a BSc at the University of Cape Town, and I completed that in 2016. And then I did a Master of Science MSc in civil engineering, specializing in water. I then moved over and worked for Mace. So Mace, we do project management and sometimes construction management services here across South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. It's an international company, really. And I worked for them in London for a bit, where I worked at the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park on a development there, and I moved over back to South Africa, where I'm currently working on an office refurbishment in Midrand. So I work at the Mace head office, which is in Johannesburg, and in the province called Gauteng. And on a personal level, I like to read. That's pretty much what I do with my spare time, and I knit quite badly, but I still do it. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you for that, Avu and Nkanyiso. I should probably introduce myself a little bit. I'm Conrad Pereira. I completed my construction management honours degree undergraduate in 2019, and I entered industry where I was working a little bit with a construction software supplier, CAD Group, and then have recently returned to university to take on the Juris Doctor at Melbourne University. Daisy, if you want to just give us a quick update as to your sort of career to date, then we'll step into it.
Yeah, right, certainly. So I'd introduce myself as a resourceful and aspiring construction professional who holds herself to a very high personal and professional standard and has a growth mindset. So I graduated my bachelor's at University of Melbourne with a construction major, and I'm currently in the last year completing a Master of Construction Management to receive the accreditation from the Australian Institute of Quantity Surveyor. So I started my practice professionally in the quantity surveying space in a Melbourne-based consultancy. And I do envision becoming a well-versed cost manager working on some of the most state-shaping iconic precincts as my long-term career vision. So I'm really glad to become actually part of CIOB Novus, in a globally connected community of aspiring professionals and emerging leaders in the development and construction space. Yeah. So thanks very much, Avu and Nkanyiso, for making that here. Based on introduction, it does sound like a very amazing and remarkable spread of backgrounds. So on that note, I wonder whether, as chairs of Novus in Cape Town and Victoria, Conrad and Nkanyiso, could you please respectively share what you're dedicated to currently to serve Novus and make it better?
Okay, I'll start. So as the chair Novus in Cape Town, I think our main goal was to get the students and young professionals in the city of Cape Town involved, get them registered and become members of the Chinese Institute of Building, explain the benefits of them, and also just creating a network group of people in the same age group. We didn't have anything like that in Cape Town before. And ever since we started, we've done several events. We've obviously had talks and lectures, but we've also had some fun events. Just as an example, at the V&A Waterfront, the one year we hosted sort of an amazing race with students and young professionals, which was quite fun. And then we went to have drinks at the end. We hosted some more social events, like temple bowling, five-a-side soccer, things of that nature. I think for me, how it's benefited me a lot, just on my personal level, is networking. And I think I've grown from a career point of view quite a lot from being able to network with other people in the age group, and also just gaining knowledge and sharing knowledge, and sharing experiences. And we talk to people, what did you do on this project when you had this problem? How do you resolve this? And it helps a lot, and you can implement that as well. And also giving advice to younger guys, because when I was a student, I didn't have the privilege of Novus, that we didn't have that privilege to ask questions. How did you get to where you are? What advice do you have when graduating? And when I finished school, I thought I knew everything. And then my first job, I realized I knew nothing, or a little bit, but not much. And what I thought construction management was, I thought it was just limited to one thing. I didn't know that it was open and broad to a whole range of different career opportunities. I mean, I've got guys who have the same qualification as me, but are working in banking, the finance industry, in all kinds of industries as well. There's a guy who's working in marketing, if you can believe that. So yeah, that was the one benefit for me of being part of Novus.
Thanks, Nkanyiso. And now over to you, Conrad. Could you share some of your most remarkable contributions for Novus, past, present, and future? And how have you sort of benefited so far from joining a global professional body like CIOB and Novus Victoria of this caliber?
Yeah, look, thanks very much for the question, Daisy. And I'd like to echo a lot of what Nkanyiso has mentioned already. I started with the Novus Victoria 5 years ago in 2017, when we launched with like-minded professionals that wanted to create a conduit and also a platform for students and graduates and young professionals with like-minded interests and enthusiasm for the construction industry to come together. I suppose agnostically, so that we're off campus, so that we came together without actually representing one university or another, so that we could bounce ideas off each other and see the different education each of us was getting, and maybe where there were holes or voids in what we were being taught. I also think it was definitely an ability to create a network and to network with people across the world and get exposure to projects that were occurring across the planet and different technologies in an different innovations that are occurring that weren't necessarily in the Australian context, and things that we should be introducing over here. I think Australia, especially with being such a global city, a multicultural destination for students especially, gives Novus Victoria and the CIOB gives us a platform to bring the different individuals together, but also mix with people from their own nations, and also find friends in faraway places from their own homelands. As far as what we've achieved over the 5 years, similar to Cape Town, we've put on events to bring people together in the face-to-face context. Up until COVID, threw a spanner in the works here last year. We've also hosted events in the CPD, Hubs in the Pub. Also a speed networking event was one of our great ideas from ourselves, if I don't mind saying, where we brought together 20 professionals from industry and 20 students, and then had them on rotation for 7 minutes each. And it gave students, I think, an ability to talk to different professionals, especially on the periphery of the construction industry, that they may not necessarily have considered a career in those sorts of divisions. Plus, in a laid-back sort of environment, such as what we prepared for students, it gave them a chance to feel relaxed and comfortable with it. We've done other events also, obviously. Trivia is always a big one. Now, we do a lot of CPD events. Breakfast innovations are always a handy one, because people are coming into the city often early. So to get a panel of experts together and to discuss different topics that follow a theme is also very good. That's effectively what we've been up to for the last 5 years. And it's been a pleasure taking part in it and providing that conduit for our students and graduates and young professionals to have an opportunity to reach out to the world because of common interests via the Chartered Institute of Building.
Fantastic, and fingers crossed for both Novus Victoria and Novus Cape Town, onwards and upwards in the future. So before we wrap up this introduction, Avu, do you mind sharing some of your experiences and outlooks as to show what you see as the future and prospect of Novus back in Cape Town?
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. I think definitely it's one of the things that are going to become increasingly important in the future. In sort of the built environment, we don't really have a body that can kind of connect others and connect with one another in the building space. So I think that's one of the things that's going to become big in terms of networking and in terms of just getting to know other people in the industry. I think also just in terms of giving people confidence, because definitely being a part of a body does give people confidence in your career and in sort of the next steps to come. So that's one of the things that I think is going to be big in the future. Currently, in the work environment, CIOB isn't sort of one of the big names, and I think that's going to change very quickly. I mean, you hear about the Institute of Civil Engineers and other sort of bodies. So I think what we can look forward to in the future is the CIOB, Novus being part of those sort of top brands coming into schools and creating a network of people in a similar industry to interact. Yeah.
Excellent. We do look forward to what you have in store in today's episode.
Moving on to the second part of our conversations with Construction Connoisseurs, we're going to be talking about career resilience and transitioning. COVID-19's pandemic seemed to be a catalyst for career moves in the industry. Can I ask you, Avu, how did you enter industry as a graduate, and when did you know you wanted to become a PM civil engineer? And then once you're finished, Avu, if you could give us your input, please, Nkanyiso.
Thanks for the question. So I didn't actually know what I wanted to do for a very long time in high school. And I guess it's one of those things here in South Africa, if you're good at like maths or science, they tell you to do engineering or medicine or, you know, those careers. So then there was a girl that I kind of admired. She was, I think, 2 years or a year older than me. And she had gone to do civil engineering. And so I asked her, just doing career research, you know, how's it going? How's civil engineering? And she said, yeah, it's great. You should study this. that's pretty much what I did. So, it's kind of sad that I don't have a deeper story than that. I don't have I knew when I first watched this building or first, I don't have one of those. It's just a sort of a decision that I made based on what she was doing, and I kind of admired her. And so I did the same thing. She subsequently left, but I'd already fallen in love with the industry at that point. So stuck to it. I think this is where I'm meant to be. And and then I studied civil engineering. And as a graduate, there are a lot of sort of career fairs and talks that different companies do, and they come to your school and they do that. And that's how I sort of applied for most of the posts that I was looking for, graduate programs, that sort of thing. And that's how I actually got into the industry. Yeah.
Fantastic. And no doubt you're inspiring the next leaders and the next female leaders in the industry to come through and follow in your footsteps. Nkanyiso, same question to yourself, sir.
So kind of similar to Avu. I didn't really know in high school, exactly which route I wanted to take. But I was influenced a lot by my dad, who had a construction business. So I obviously helped out there, and I was looking through courses as well. I also considered engineering, considered a whole range of courses. And then I saw the construction management course at NMMU, and then I spoke to a couple of guys at one of these career functions, these open days that they were hosting. And I think what attracted me a lot to the construction management as a course was that it was very diverse. So you had a lot of like business and commercial modules and law modules, and obviously also your building science modules as well. So it was kind of a nice round combination of a whole range of learning areas. So that's what interested me a lot in construction management, and that's why I ended up choosing it. And I'd say, I definitely enjoyed what I did, like studying. I enjoyed my studying years, not just the actual course itself, but I think the ethos and sort of the friendship that we had as a construction management group at the university as well. We helped each other. We always wanted each other to do the best. And it was just a great learning environment.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. Look, I might give my 2 cents in here while I've got the opportunity. I suppose I was driven to construction just because I love the tangible side of seeing the built environment come together, and was always excited by it as a child or what have you, and then got involved in the trade sort of side of things. Back in the region I'm from, because there's a lot of blue collar workers and people working on the tools and what have you. Ended up learning a bit of concreting through my brother-in-laws, and then eventually went on a working holiday over to Ireland. And over there, we decided to introduce stencil pattern concrete into the Irish market. And before too long, I was running my own company over there, which turned out to be very successful, and did that for 7 years. But then upon return to Australia, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and that's where I thought I should upskill myself and return to university to undertake formal studies and undertake my construction management degree. And look, like Nkanyiso, I think it was great to be part of a cohort of people that were aspiring professionals in our industry. And that's where I also think getting involved with the Chartered Institute of Building, and Novus in particular, gave me the opportunity to mix with people in a face-to-face environment beyond university to share our passions, I suppose.
So as the disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic continues worldwide, do you mind sharing what you see are the main challenges you face as a PM or civil engineer in the current climate?
Okay, so maybe I'll start off just maybe before COVID, the challenges that I faced as a PM or sort of as a young professional, I think in this African context, is that there wasn't a lot of mentorship in my field or profession in terms of, somebody guiding you, what right career decisions should you make, is it the right time to change my job? This is what I have interest in. How do I get more involved in this? So having that sort of guidance when you're a young candidate was one of the main challenges when I started my career. And I think South Africa construction market economy, if you want to call it that, it's market is extremely tight. You working, a lot of competition, profit margins, you have to be really, really lean and mean make it work and what's clever. So those are definitely one of the challenges, sort of entering the industry and learning and growing within the industry. And to be more specific, the COVID-19 pandemic, I think, hit us extremely hard, like it did most countries. South Africa's construction industry is still extremely labor intensive. So a lot of people, when we had the hard lockdown, which was probably for about 6 weeks, a lot of people weren't getting paid or salaries were cut in half. But maybe one positive that came out of it is that it forced innovation. It forced us to think out the box. It forced companies, working from home, having meetings on Teams, resolving things when you can and how you can with the resources that you've got, and finding solutions and trying to catch up for lost time. We had to find many ways and different mechanisms of making it work. So I think maybe on a specific project that I was involved in on the COVID, well, in terms of relation to COVID, is we had a sort of civil infrastructure development here in Cape Town that we were busy with. And when the lockdown was announced, we only had about 3 days to prepare. So we had to secure the site. The site wasn't in a safe area in South Africa. South Africa has an issue with crime. So we had to find ways of securing and installing a secure fence within the space of 3 days before, we all went on hard lockdown, and protecting all the equipment on site and machinery, etc., and negotiating with the contractor as well, because there's obviously costs involved in those kind of exercises. So yeah, those were the sort of main challenges that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then just in terms of sort of prospects going forward post-COVID, I think our industry is now, because of the regulations, social distancing, masks, hand sanitizer, cleaning, it's forced a lot of good hygiene on our sites. It's actually increased the importance of health and safety, which probably wasn't really taken that seriously locally. And it's just made people be aware, especially the labor force, and not always the most sort of, in terms of education levels, not, because they don't have the privilege to go to school, some of them. So it's actually forced them to be, even, they take what they learn on site, they take it back home and, teach their children and their families, this is how, you must be to stay safe and hygiene, etc. So it's had some benefits as well in many respects.
That's very interesting, Nkanyiso, in relation to the response of COVID in South Africa, is relation to hard lockdowns. We here in Victoria, although we faced a lockdown of, I think it was extended out to about 110 days, construction was always considered an essential service. And as a result, construction didn't stop in the Australian context whatsoever. If anything, our rural projects, I think, picked up speed, in fairness, to take coverage of it. When we went into our second stage lockdown, we were reduced to a 75% occupancy on site. And then I think it was reduced again to 50% occupancy. But we at no stage do we ever shut down. Like, we did have to keep up social distancing and reductions of staff numbers on site. Similar to yourself, we had to work through the contractual obligations and then the schedule obligations as far as time was concerned to try and keep the project on track. But as far as our warehousing and supply conditions were concerned, we were still able to maintain supply. I think Australia, one of the deficits we faced because of the COVID was we're very reliant on Asia for our supplies coming in from especially China. And when China was affected in the initial stages, it was a good warning shot over our bows, I suppose. We're very lucky that it takes us almost 8 weeks to get supplies almost into our market. So we still sort of had an 8-week buffer to actually prepare for the fact that our supplies were going to be shortened. And as a result, I think industry and I suppose construction especially pivoted quickly for that. I think one thing that's very different in an Australian context, and especially here in Victoria, where unions are very strong, is that we were very quick to adopt safety and health and safety standards that are our bread and butter. Like, our union keeps us on our toes as it is, but adopting new safety standards for the COVID pandemic and restrictions on our ability to function was accepted and adopted quite fast. If anything, we just had to quickly, especially on a site that I was involved in, a wind farm out in Western Victoria, they just had to provide extra facilities for amenities, staff rooms, meetings for pre-start every morning. Had to be the staff had to be split across 2 different sites. But other than that, we were ready to go. So it's very interesting to hear that you had to go through a hard lockdown. So we didn't have to face any of those sorts of troubles. But yeah, look, very interesting to hear that. And yeah, and I think also our government has moved quickly to look into stimulus spending as to how to resuscitate our financial markets and how we're going to come out of this COVID pandemic and our first recession, to be honest, in 30 years, I do believe. The Australian market has been growing non-stop for 30 years, and we don't really get a chance to stop because the environmental conditions are pretty good for construction all year round. So I think stimulus spending is definitely coming, and it's on track to enter our market if it hasn't already. But our governments, especially state, have already started to approve and look to accelerate planning processes and approvals to get us off the ground sooner than later. So there's definitely a large pipeline of works that are coming through to stimulate industry. And look, I think Australia is already on the growth path again as far as economic realms are concerned. So there's a lot of projects coming, and we were very lucky, I suppose, at the time of COVID, because we had a lot of mega projects in the pipeline already. So I think in Melbourne itself, we've already got 6 tunnel boring machines going under us with tunnels going everywhere. And now we've accelerated that to include other projects that may have been delayed in the past, but now have been accelerated forward, and planning is well and truly in place for those. So that's that to wrap up section 2. Excellent. So moving on, climate works in Australia are set to test whether the implied goal agreed by world leaders at the Paris Climate Conference is set to cut greenhouse gases to net zero by 2050. We're trying to achieve this by creating jobs in sustainable industries and to set ourselves up for a smoother and speedier shift to zero emissions economy. There's talks about a stimulus injection, as mentioned previously, for cost into clean technologies, and with renewable energy becoming cheaper than fossil fuels, and for the cost of batteries plunging to 80% in a decade. It saves much for the shift needed now to be rolled out quickly by rapid and large-scale deployment of familiar technologies. Australia is very lucky that we have a lot of the lithium in the ground, so mining will become a big part of our operations going forward to get lithium up for batteries. But if I could ask you both, what's Africa's response to sustainability going forward to assist with the coming out of the COVID pandemic?
I think the first thing to remember is it's just very important to look at sort of sustainability, or look at the country through the lens of someone who is in Africa, or someone who lives in sort of Africa. So some of our greatest sort of challenges in the country right now are unemployment and just getting food to people and that sort of thing. So I think it's important to remember when talking about sustainability, just those first things. So it may not be a topic that's as high up in the conversation as it probably is in a lot of the other first world countries. We are a third world country. So it's very difficult for us to to put forward like very challenging sort of sustainability goals and that stuff when our main goals at the moment are just getting food on people's plates, you know. Yep. So I think that's very important to know. But having said that, South Africa is a part of, South Africa in particular, I can't speak for the rest of Africa, is a part of a lot of discussions around sustainability and what our sort of goals are, and net carbon emissions. I can't give you numbers. I don't really think I know them, but I do know that we are part of the conversation, especially in the private sector. We are working towards construction in a way that is more sustainable. Like the project that Nkanyiso and I worked on at the V&A waterfront, being one of the first green star, 6-star rated green buildings. I think that is the direction that we're going to move in with the industry going forward. So it is something that a lot of the people are trying to consider, and a lot of people are, people in the built environment are, becoming more and more aware of. Maybe not at the speed as first world countries, but it's definitely a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you 100%, Avu. Sustainability, it is growing in interest in South Africa. I think initially the challenge was convincing clients of the long-term benefits of things like green building. But I think if you go now, especially clients in the private sector as well, are becoming more aware of the long-term benefits of sustainability and preserving the environment. I think, excuse me, we do have the challenge of us being a third world country. It's not always on the agenda. In terms of a lot of interest, there's a lot more pressing issues and items that need to be addressed because we are a third world country. But yeah, I think we can see the interest growing and people, they use that as a marketing tool. This building is 5-star, green star rated, and these are the savings you get. You pay less for electricity and less for water. You must move into our facilities. So a lot of developers, perhaps maybe that we compete with, are now also taking green building a lot more seriously and respecting a lot more. So there's a lot of sort of a long-term future growth path that's looking positive in terms of South Africa.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's great to hear. I suppose slowly but surely across the world, we're all making incremental steps towards a more sustainable future. And I know Mace especially, while you did your 6-star building there on the waterfront, Mace have been pushing into it a fair bit. They've even adopted a system that's being used, it was experimented over here and then launched, and now they own the rights to, or part of the rights to it from the Hickory building systems, which is a full prefabrication system that's fully developed offsite and then installed on site as pods and modules. And Mace have definitely picked that up through the UK. So I'm sure that Mace will be introducing that across the world as they share more of that expertise with Hickory here in Australia. So thanks very much for those responses.
Okay, so as we're about to conclude our conversation for today, we do hope that the listeners have gained some fascinating insights about the South African construction industry and really onboard some of the insights so as to propel and scale their career regardless of where they are globally. So to conclude this episode, we do want to lean into the last topic of today, which is regarding women in construction and female and gender diversity and inclusion in the South African context specifically, where Avu currently operates. So Avu, over to you. Could you please share some of your outlooks, particularly on gender equality, and some of the measures you think can really improve the status quo to empower and include women in the construction space?
Thanks, Daisy. I think just starting off with where we are in South Africa at the moment, construction is definitely a male-dominated industry. There are a lot less women here than there are men. In particular, there are less Black women in the industry. And I think why that is just, in general, it's seen as something that sort of men do. And I think the more men dominate in an industry, the more they sort of, women are less likely to enter that industry because they think it's just something that's more suited for men. And I think one of the things that we can do to sort of break that stigma is just going in and explaining what the construction industry is about. I think there's a misconception that it's about, you physically being on the ground hauling bricks or fixing rebar or something of the sort. But I think people don't understand that there's a lot of different career paths that you can take. You can do quantity surveying, you can do project management, there are many things that you can do in the construction space that don't involve physically, sort of being outside, which is something that seems to deter women a lot. And I think one of the things that we can do as well is just promote women, because it starts back in school, promote women to do the sort of subjects and just, that are required to enter into the space, because it just seems from high school, women are encouraged to do more of the sort of commerce, numbers, or even like home economics. Those are the type of careers that are promoted for women. which is fine. It just, as long as we're going to understand that they don't only have to do that, they also have the option to do something else. So that's where we can start by networking, speaking, and just chatting to one another about the industry so people have a better understanding of what it is. Yeah,
that's really brilliant. Thanks, Avu. Nkanyiso, do you mind sharing what your outlook is and maybe exemplify any of the initiatives or practices that you've experienced or even better become part of so as to promote the gender inclusion and the facilities that can improve the females' experience in the corporate space and in the broader industry context?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree with what Avu said. It's all about exposure. So females aren't always exposed to these kind of career paths. They sometimes even discouraged in some households to pursue, careers in construction or in engineering. But I think there's definitely a change locally. We are seeing a lot more female representation. I think females are being a lot more respected, and not just necessarily in the corporate space, but there's a lot of, I've worked on projects with female site managers, and they just do so well. They just excel. They're very well organized, very well, very good at communicating. So it's just it's good to see, and it's good for the industry. We need diversity in our industry, gender diversity to be more specific, and we need to empower women. I think we need to give women the platform, to build themselves and to showcase what they can accomplish. And I think they can definitely accomplish anything that a man can accomplish 100%. I think also just going forward, generally speaking, sort of to conclude, I think the construction industry in South Africa definitely does need to evolve and embrace a lot more innovation and a lot more tools. When you look at first world countries, things like prefabricated, what we spoke about earlier, just briefly, materials, we're still very labor intensive. We're still very sort of old school concrete in situ bricks. It definitely needs to diversify a lot more, the industry. And I think we can learn a lot. And this is why I'm very passionate about the CIOB. There's a lot of learning materials, and there's a lot of sort of innovative partnerships that we can do with the local industry here in South Africa.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, I echo your sentiments, and I think it's a global initiative that we need to drive forward through all of industry. I think the built environment is only better for it the more women we can include in our industry, because, like you mentioned, the ability to communicate and provide that pragmatic platform for us to think about things through a different lens and actually gain that perspective, so that our environment isn't as regimental as it has been, or institutionalized outputs as we have in the past, can only be aided by having females, female uptake improve as we go forward. I think, and it's also, as you mentioned, Nkanyiso, the CIOB is the perfect vehicle to get boots on the ground and to get people like ourselves out into industry to promote the different facets and avenues to go there. Because I think, as Avu mentioned, a lot of people, especially even here in the Australian context, would relate construction and building to that high vis vest on site. They don't put it back into the people in the offices, the construction managers that are assisting to make the process all come together. So I think by getting us on the ground and out there, sharing our passions for industry and what excites us by leaving a legacy behind us, by being able to look at the structures we create, it can definitely excite the interest of the youth across the board, but especially females, to include a female uptake into our industry. Well, Nkanyiso and Avu, thank you very much for taking your time to share your experience with us on Conversations with Construction Connoisseurs. We're delighted to have a conversation between our two countries, or two continents even, to understand the cross-national issues within the industry and the responses coming out of this pandemic, and how we're going to drive the industry forward for the better, given that we're the youth that are going to change and become tomorrow's leaders in our construction sector. We hope you've enjoyed the interview. Thanks for everybody for joining in with us. enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much for your time. And by all means, please do follow us via our social media channels. CIOB Novus Victoria is our handle, and Nkanyiso will provide that for South Africa.
Yeah, sure. So you can follow us on CIOB Africa. We've got a page on LinkedIn. And yeah, that's where you can keep track of what we do in South Africa.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, thanks very much for your time, Avu.
Thank you for having us as well.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Yeah. Thank
Very
you.
good.
Yes.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much.